We have talked about food waste elsewhere, and we have pointed out that food waste contributes up to 6% of the total global emissions. This is a special report on food waste index from the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. It's a year old, but it doesn't matter because the message remains the same year after year, and hopefully it'll switch over at some point. And this figure is not just meaningless. A lot of food gets actually removed from the food system because it looks ugly, and people don't like produce that is ugly looking, I suppose, even though now there is a movement to have a separate market for ugly tomatoes and ugly produce. The Sustainable Development Goal 12 is on sustainable production and consumption, and that goal, the brochure from that SDG 12 shows this little bit talking about too much food being lost or wasted in every country every day. And it happens at harvesting, transport, storage, processing, and 13.3% of the world's food is lost after harvesting and before reaching retail markets. And you also have wastage continuing from processing to house. So in this sense, to houses, grocery stores, households, and restaurants. 17% of total food is wasted at the consumer level. So these are general terms, but in an aggregate sense for the whole globe. But this UNEP report looks at more specific details of country level data and then households, retail, processing, and so on. The key findings to start with, and then we'll look at the end at the recommendations. This report estimates that around 931 million tons of food waste was generated in 2019, 61% of which came from households, 26% from food service, and 13% from retail. This suggests that 17% of the total global food production may be wasted, 11% in households, 5% in food service, and 2% in retail. Secondly, household per capita waste generation is found to be broadly similar across country income groups, suggesting that action on food waste is equally relevant in high, upper middle, and lower middle income countries. So we'll see some numbers and some countries where the food waste per capita doesn't even make sense when you look at income levels. Intuitively you expect a pattern, but such a pattern doesn't emerge based on income levels that one would expect. This diverges from earlier narratives concentrating consumer food waste in developing countries and food production, storage, transportation losses in developing countries. So where food was being wasted was generally assumed to be at consumer level in developed countries and in production, storage, and transportation in developing countries. Data doesn't seem to bear that out. Previous estimates of consumer food waste significantly underestimated its scale, which is a shame. While data doesn't permit a robust comparison across time, food waste at consumer level, that is household and food service, appears to be more than twice the previous FAO estimates from 2011. There is insufficient data on edible fraction of food waste to allow comparative analysis across country income group, but even if inedible parts like bones, pits, and eggshells, etc., predominate in lower income countries, there is sufficient total food waste in these areas for circular approaches or other food waste diversion strategies to be important. So that gets into some highlights on where the low-hanging fruit may be in terms of reducing waste. The approach has 3 steps. In level 1, modeling and extrapolation is done with the data providing approximate estimate, not suitable for tracking purposes. So that's level 1. In level 2, direct measurements of food waste sufficiently accurate for tracking, and in level 3, additional information and disaggregation for economic groups and countries and so on, and then supports development of food waste prevention strategy. Okay, so Average food waste in kg per capita per year by World Bank income classification, averaging medium and high confidence estimates for countries. Income groups go from high income countries, upper middle income, lower middle income, and low income. And you look at average food waste in kilograms per capita per year at household level, food service, and in retail. And you can see that the difference is not really very telling in terms of dependence on income. And in fact, lower middle income countries have 91 kilogram per capita per year. Of course, more details are needed here in terms of why that happens. In India, for example, poor people don't have storage, don't have refrigeration. They have pest problems like rats and so on. So that has to be part of the story, I'm sure, in details. In general, low-income countries, there is insufficient data, but for high-income countries, food service waste is at 26 kilogram per capita per year, and at retail, it's 13 kilograms per capita per year. Okay, the accounting also looks at the scope of the food waste index in levels 2 and 3 that we looked at previously, using the food loss and waste accounting and reporting standards. So it has a time frame of 12 months. Material types include food and inedible parts like bones and such that we talked about. In terms of destination, animal feed, biomaterial processing are not considered, and stuff that's not harvested is also not considered, but you consider combined anaerobic digestion, composting, aerobic digesters, controlled combustion, land application, landfill, refuse, discard, sewer, and so on. And the boundaries include food categories, so all food and beverages, and life cycles include all three stages: household, food service, and retail. And entire country is considered in geography, and related issues include measurement conducted sector by sector on food waste from all commodities. Manufacturing food losses can be reported where multiple commodities combined during processing, and packaging excluded from estimates in these in this report. Just as a schematic, food waste indices for two hypothetical countries are looked at. The per capita consumption may be very different, but you give them a baseline score of 100 in the year 2020, and then you start to drive towards the goals of SDG 12 by 2030 to drop below 50%. You achieve 50% reduction in food waste. So country 1 is doing well in the beginning, but then it flattens out, and by 2030 it is still much above the SDG 12 goal, whereas country 2, which started out higher in the food waste index, then accomplishes it by dropping quickly to below 50% food waste in 2030, or 50% reduction in food waste by 2030. Okay, just to compare some numbers, we get a sense of how waste is happening in all income countries, and it's not just at transportation or production level, but also at food waste at consumption level, okay, household level. So findings of studies providing results by income group, various references, looking at Pakistan in an area and the number of households that were used. Food waste by income group in kilogram per capita per year. Low is higher than medium and high is high, so that's not a very intuitive trend. In India, looking at Dehradun again, so low income has lower than medium or high, so this is more intuitively understandable, assuming poor people, low income people don't waste much food. In Iraq again, similar trend, low, medium to high. Medium and high are almost the same here, and so that's Iraq. This is another place in Iraq. South Africa, much lower food waste by income groups. So you see here 27, 30, and 45 kilogram per capita per year for low, medium, and high incomes respectively. So Kenya, on the other hand, Nairobi, 2 studies, higher for richer people, and slightly different numbers here with medium income showing much higher food waste per capita in kilograms per year compared to high income. And Ghana is not that different for our income levels either. Looking at data points relating to households from studies in Asia and Pacific, again, various studies, Australia, Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, and New Zealand, and the trends don't necessarily make sense. Okay, so if you look at Bangladesh, there are 2 studies that report very different food waste estimates. This is from the households, and in China also, various places show very different levels of food waste at household level in kilograms per capita. Hong Kong is a rich country and it seems to have much higher food waste in per capita food waste. Okay, nationwide average here is estimated at 23 kilogram per capita, which is much lower than some of the numbers at other places like Beijing as 59, Suzhou at 67, and urban China total is at 150. So if you average over rural and urban centers, obviously you get misleading numbers. In India again, Dehradun in the south, Andhra Pradesh, and 2 studies on Dehradun producing very different numbers, 73, 58, and 20. So obviously there have to be caveats. So the main message is that rich countries are not necessarily wasting at household level, and poor countries are not necessarily wasting at transport and production and so on. There is a mix of income levels and wastages, and places where it's wasted in terms of retail, household, and food processing. That's Pakistan, and that's Sri Lanka, and that's Vietnam. So main point to note is that the trends are not systematically related to income levels and places where they are wasted. Just to look at data points from North America, Canada, and the US, household sectors, 79 in Canada kilogram per capita. In US it's lower, but food service and retail also have waste here. For Canada we don't have that data. So for many of the countries which are tracking these 3 turn out to be important to look at: household, food service, and retail, and then you can relate those to income levels and locations as well. Average food waste in kilogram per capita per year, again by the World Bank income classification, which we already looked at, so I won't repeat that here. But if you do a scatter plot of food waste against GDP of country, level of household food waste in kilogram per capita per year versus GDP per capita, you can see that the lower income countries have much more scatter in household food waste than when you get into reasonably well-off countries for whatever reason. Of course, you can always argue that sampling and data are not enough, but one has to figure out what are the reasons why poor people may be wasting food, and maybe there is ways to reduce those with things like solar powered refrigerations, cooling systems, and so on, and protection against pests like mice. Estimates of global food waste by sector then: household, a global average in kilogram per capita per year from food waste is 74 kilograms. 2019 total was 569 million tons. Remembering again that global average will be averaging over a fairly large range. In food service it's at 32 kilogram per capita per year. In 2019 the total globally was 244 million tons, and at retail it's at 15 global average per capita and total at 118 in 2019. Total food waste per capita is 121, and the global total loss is at 931 million tons. That's almost 1 billion tons of food wasted. What are the recommendations? Accurate, traceable, and comparable measurement is a key starting point for national food waste strategies and policies to deliver the 50% reduction in consumer food waste targeted in SDG 12.3, sustainable production and consumption. At present, 17 countries have high quality data compatible with SDG 12.31b reporting for at least one sector, with a further 42 countries with some measurement estimate, which with some small updates could create an SDG 12.3 compatible estimation. So are we headed towards there? Not quite yet. Another point to be made from the report: while this report improves our understanding of global food waste, there remain a number of data gaps. One significant gap is the proportion of inedible parts. So this is requires to be better estimated, and then maybe there are ways to use it instead of simply discarding it or burning it up and so on. Food waste as measured in Food Waste Index includes both food destined for human consumption and its associated edible parts. Understanding how food waste in a particular sector is disaggregated between its edible and inedible parts will help stakeholders both in understanding the problem and in designing the solutions. At present, little is known about the disaggregation in middle and low income countries. A lot of data gaps exist. The Food Waste Index report provides strong evidence that makes the case for action globally. So everybody is in this together in wasting food. Measurement of food waste at retail, food service, and household levels using the framework and methods established in this report will strengthen estimates in most countries, informing the development of national food waste prevention strategies and heading towards reducing food waste by 50% by 2030 to meet the goals of Sustainable Development Goal 12. Okay, so I'll leave it here. It's brief. The report is very nice. You can go and find more details there, and of course they have a long bibliography which provides you tremendous amount of additional details at all time scales and spatial scales. Okay.